Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey Podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey Podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jarrod Stoutmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Active Turnkey Podcast. I'm your host, Jarrod Stoutmeister, and I have the Tom Olson.
And we are excited to be here today.
Oh man, we've been looking forward to this one for a long time. This is a good one. Yeah. Today we're gonna give you a little bit of something. Typically when people are looking to get into real estate, one of the difficulties is trying to find information, right? Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Were you reading?
Yeah, I was reading over here,
okay.
Jarrod.
Well,
there's things called books.
I do,
right?
Yeah, I do know they're called. Now, I mean, right, book form, even in book form, which is a thing.
Well, I'm reading.
He's reading.
I'm
in
trying
book
to learn
form.
some more about real estate investing over here.
Yeah, is that your own book, Tom?
No, this is not my book. You said, where can you learn about real estate investing?
Yes. Well, that is today's.
That's what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yep. The title is Where Can I Learn More About Real Estate Investing?
So where can we learn more about real estate investing, Jarrod? I mean, I think what we ought to do is we ought to come up with the top 15 places or the top 20. I don't know. Maybe. How many do you think we can come up with in this short notice? 10, 15?
10, maybe 10,
in that
15.
10, 15-ish.
Sure.
We'll just do ish, right?
Okay.
So today we're going to give you guys our favorites, right?
Sure.
So
yes.
the top in our mind. So we're going to, so if you're starting out in real estate investing, you probably want to do at least a little learning, right? It's kind of like as soon as you get out of high school, a lot of people go to college, right? Not everybody. Sure. And I don't believe college is for everybody. No. Sure, but I think there are a lot of kids that they go to college for a reason, and they kind of have to learn something first, and then they go and practically apply it, right? Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you're in that learning stage, and I think all people should be learning, I think all people should be reading, all people should be consuming and learning more and more and more. I can tell you, I've read over 550 books over the last 20 years, and every time I read, I feel like I learned something. Sure. I mean, that doesn't sound like it's too, stupid or too amazing, it just sounds normal, right? Simple. And when you learn something, when you read something, you learn something. Sure. Right? It's not earth-shattering.
Right.
So I think we all should be reading, and we all should be trying to learn new things. And because of that, we thought, hey, why don't we just put a quick podcast together on, what are our favorites? What do we think is the top resources for you to go out and learn?
Yeah, this is something that, very often when I have new investors, guys who have heard about it, they hear people talking about it, and they're talking about, trying to find some options. Where do I go to learn about real estate and investing? And in many cases, obviously, when they come to us, they're talking about rental properties. And so they're talking about, where can I go and what can I do? What can I learn in order to do that? Now, at some point, you can learn enough to get stuff done.
I think some people can learn too much.
Yeah.
It's like some people, they're like seminar junkies. I see that a lot. Where people just go to all these seminars, they listen to all the podcasts, they've read all the books, they're on everybody's YouTube channel, they watch all, and they've never done a deal.
Yeah, very information heavy.
And I think that's dangerous.
I agree. And actually, we've seen some of those guys with investors, guys who have kind of do what we do. They can have a conversation with you that's impressive.
Oh yeah,
they can,
and they've never done a deal.
Yeah, yeah, that is very much the case. Now, we don't pretend to know everything. We've done a couple deals. We've sold a few houses over time. But these are we're going to talk about today is some books, some sources, some podcasts that we've listened to, read, some other resources we've used.
So make sure you guys get ready for this. Okay, so I would get your pen and paper out.
We didn't do it like a top 10. We didn't rank it that way, though.
Yeah, but
That
we're
might have
going to
been
start
helpful.
at the top. So
we're starting number one.
I think we should start number one, Jared.
Ooh.
So everybody get
Wow.
their pen and paper out there, and this is going to be the top source for you getting your real estate investing.
Do we need a drum roll?
I don't know.
You love drum rolls.
Maybe we should do a drum roll. I don't know, but
Okay.
We have scoured the internet. We have watched
Exhausted.
and listened to many books and read many books, and we have watched many podcasts and YouTube channels on this subject of real estate investing.
Sure.
And we have decided to come out and proclaim
Number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Numero uno
Yeah.
for those of you.
You got it. So you think it's time? Is it time now, Jared? Can we?
I think
give
we've
them
built it up enough.
the
I
number one?
think they're all waiting.
They're ready
Pins
for
and
us?
needles.
Okay, so everybody's ready. I know this is going to be earth-shattering. The number one place, number one to get real estate investing, talk,
Strategy, learning, education.
right here
Yeah.
on the Active Turnkey
Wow,
podcast
man.
with Jared Stokemeister.
Wow. I had no idea. I'm
Yes,
so
right
honored.
here. This is the number one place. So
I should have had a speech.
if you're listening to this, then you're listening to this. If you're watching it, then you're watching it, and you already know.
It's true.
But you got to tell your friends. I'm just saying. So all the rest of them, maybe you don't know. And maybe you need to write the other ones down, but this one you already know, so you need to go give us a 5-star review on
Right now.
on Google, on Apple Play. Right now, you need to like and subscribe and share and tell all your friends about the Active Turnkey podcast, because we are the self-proclaimed best real estate show on the internet.
If I can be so bold, it's really not even close.
Not even close. I mean, on a scale of a 1 to 10. We're an 11, of course.
We actually interviewed 2 people for this.
Yeah.
It was me and Tom. We interviewed us both, and it was...
And we passed.
It was unanimous. So, there you have it. I think we're done here. There you have it. Where
the
can you
Active
go?
Turnkey podcast.
Okay. So, aside from Active Turnkey...
Aside from the Active Turnkey
Roger,
podcast.
copy that. Okay.
What comes to your mind, Jared?
I think, as a dad, my son, he's 17, he's getting into investing. He actually lends to our company, which is pretty exciting. It's pretty cool. To someone like that who's young but eager, I think he's a senior, and he's struggling over what to do. He doesn't know what he wants to do next, but I think he wants to do real estate. He really does. So a couple things, you start off simple. Simple but good, I think I already know your favorite book, so I won't bring that one up, but one of the ones he liked was The Richest Man in Babylon, teaching him a basic book, but very profound in its teaching, and an excellent book, and he loved it, and it's something that helped him. But I think it's very practical, very simple. But George Clayson, I believe, is the author.
Yeah, I love Richest Man in Babylon. It's a book that I've actually made my kids listen to in the car on a family trip. I think we've actually listened to it twice.
Nice.
And it is honestly this isn't just for kids either.
Yeah.
I feel like even if you've never been really exposed to investing and you just kind of had a 9-to-5 job and you're 60 years old, this would be very applicable to you. And I think it really teaches the basics of investing, which is you have to have something to invest first.
Sure.
So going all the way back to that, and then the reasoning for investing, and having the right mindset when it comes to to investing. So it's not really a modern real estate investing book, so to speak. Yeah. So you might have thought maybe we're going to come up. You start with some kind of real estate centered book, but I really do believe there's other books out there that really tell a story that will help you even way more sometimes than some of the real estate books. But we're going to get to some real estate books. We've got a bunch on our list here, but definitely Richest Man in Babylon. Love that book. It's awesome.
I think it's simplicity really, because in the last podcast we talked about, I've heard you say, you never want to I don't know how you phrase it, but make the most important thing the most important thing. And sometimes, this book kind of talks about those things that they're kind of basic.
You want to make the most important.
Correct.
Thing,
yeah, and these principles in this book really are those things. Because those other books you can get are fact-based. There's all these little nuances and strategies you can really do, and those are great. But in the end, you'd like to get down the basics and never forget them. In fact, I think earlier you were talking about a different book. Just earlier today, you were talking about accounting and how the basic principles over time are generally the best ways to go because that's what they are. They're basically almost laws in a sense. And so you can almost call some of these things laws. But that was the first book. What about you? Give us a book. Give us another source.
Well, one of my favorite books of all time. And again, I think this is so the first couple of books that we give, and we're going to probably mix in a couple other ones. So are not real estate books, so to speak. But I do believe that they're going to help you. Probably, I think they're almost like building blocks that you need to have this knowledge and this mindset before you even get into real estate investing. And that is The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver teaches the 5 laws about money, and it really goes through this story about how a man figured out that he really has to give first. So I think if you understand that when it comes to investing, you don't have these false expectations going into it. A lot of people get into real estate investing and they think, I'm just going to start making money. Yeah. And it's like, okay, no, you have to give first. You have to give some time and some effort and some energy and some focus and some money in order to actually get. Now, you have to be willing to accept when that time comes, and you have to almost not just be willing to accept, but also force that accept. It has to come back to you. And if it's not going to come back to you, then you need to move on or you need to do something different. But you have to give it time. You have to, give first. It tells a story about somebody thinking that they're going to gain interest from a bank without putting money into it first. It talks about trying to get a heat from a fire before we put wood in it. That doesn't work. Sure. But the people in America that grow up just waiting for the next stimulus check, that's what they think. Sure. I mean, that's how, and it's so sad that people believe that way, and they're willing to just vote for the person that gives them the biggest stimulus check. Is just ludicrous and ridiculous. So I would highly recommend both those books before you even read a real estate book. I would read both of those books and start your journey there.
No, it's interesting you say
after
that.
The Active Turnkey podcast, of course.
Number 3. This is number 2 and 3 on this. But it's interesting you say that because when you're that guy that you think you're going to just start making money right away, when you are approaching people, they feel that. I mean, it's obvious to them. These people who have been in the business for a long time, they know what you're after. You're not there to do a deal. You're there to make money on them, right? And and so it's really interesting. And now again, I think we tend to attract to those we're similar to in many ways, and opposite attract. But in this case, I think we tend to be around people who have a similar focuses. And so people who invest with us, they know, like, and trust us. They get along with us, and that makes sense. But I think that's really interesting as you see those people, and really people who do good business. Sometimes they don't really want to hang out with those guys. But that's a whole other conversation, right?
All right. So Jerry, what's the next one you got?
In our list, we compiled. We had a couple other ones. One of them is your favorite investing book, or a real rental investing, whatever you want to call it. You told me. You told us on the podcast, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, okay. So this is probably one of the most famous real estate books, and it really does. Robert Kiyosaki talked a long time ago about his rich dad and his poor dad, and how if you make the decisions that the rich make, it's funny because Warren Buffett actually makes this very profound statement. And he says, if the poor would just do what the rich do, they will no longer be poor, or they would no longer be poor. And that's pretty much what this book teaches. This book teaches that if you act like the rich, if you do what the rich does, which is they buy assets and they let the assets, create income for them, instead of buying stuff and then not having anything, which is what most people in America do. Sure. But if you buy assets, the assets, you're building wealth. And he talks about building wealth and also cash flow at the same time. And it's really, most people that are probably listening to this podcast have actually probably read that book, and I wouldn't blame you. meeting the man was like not as a good experience for me. But as far as the wisdom that is in that book that was written, I don't know, 20 years ago, I think that there is a lot of good wisdom in that book, and it kind of talks about the 4 different things that you can be. You can be an employee, you can be self-employed, you can own a business, or you can be an investor. And those are the 4 different things. And I think there's another book that I'd even recommend. I think it's actually called The Cash Flow Quadrants. So it really talks about cash flow and how that really works, and how you can basically create financial freedom through cash flow.
Well, those are excellent. Now we're really starting to get into a little bit. Of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad, virtually everyone knows. You can find it at any of your local thrift stores. They're generally going to be there. But he sold a lot of copies. But the cash flow quadrant, many people, might not know about. So that's definitely a good one.
And he has more books too.
Oh, he has a bunch.
Like really, you could read any book. I just think that those 2 are the ones that are a little bit different. A couple of his books mention some differences and some little nuances, but a lot of the books are the same. A lot of they kind of just tell the same stories and kind of prove the same points. But really, I think if I was to tell you to read one, I'd probably tell you to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. If I were to tell you to read 2, I'd probably go with the Cash Flow Quadrant as the second one.
Okay. So we've got a couple more here that we've compiled. We also have the book on managing rental properties. Mm-hmm. And so if you're familiar with the Bigger Pockets, this is certainly something that would be posted there naturally, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and why not? These guys are really good. Yeah. The guys who run Bigger Pockets, Brandon Turner, and what's the other guy's name? It's split in my mind right now. Dorset. I'm not helping him. Anyways, Brandon Turner is kind of the main guy, I think. But anything really. All the Bigger Pockets books, I've probably read 4 or 5 of them, and we might even have 2, I think, on the list maybe. But I would recommend reading those, because a lot of the guys that read, a lot of gurus, so to speak, that write investing books or real estate investing books, they kind of give you the pie in the sky stuff.
Oh, sure.
And I feel like Brandon does a really good job of kind of putting it on the bottom shelf and not trying to get you to expect something that you're not going to be able to get.
Sounds like he's providing value and not trying to sell you a product, more or less. Which
I mean, he teaches things like cash reserves. He teaches things like, make sure that you have a budget for your maintenance items, and you know what I mean, like expect those things to happen. This is not like it's not like nothing never happens.
Sure.
So I think for the most part, I recommend a lot of the stuff that they do. They do a really good job. And honestly, when it comes to that, I think other good resources are podcasts, and they do have a great podcast. And I also would say that their platform is something. I don't spend a ton of my own time on the platform. We could probably do a bunch of marketing through it if we wanted to. But honestly, we're kind of busy with what we got going on right now, and it's hard sometimes to invest a bunch of time into somebody else's network, because I'm trying to invest time in our own network.
Sure.
So,
yes.
But I don't mean any disrespect. I do think that there's a lot you can learn on the platform, and you can learn a lot from the podcast and any of those books.
Now you have another one on here, Tom, that I'm not familiar with, but this one's called Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Otzetto.
Tom Wheelwright, yes. He's a tax attorney, and he's probably one of the top attorneys when it comes to, accountant, CPA. He's probably one of the top CPAs when it comes to real estate. And it is one of those things that I feel like I'm fortunate, and I'm kind of lucky. I'm blessed, whatever you want to call me, because I have what I think is another one of the best accountants in the country in Josh Belk. We actually also does have another podcast called Belk on Business, but it's not really a real estate podcast. So I did mention it here on this podcast, but but it's not really a real estate podcast. But Tom Wheelwright, yes, anything that he has put out is really, really good. And he really kind of lays it out for you. And excuse me, I would bet most accountants don't know what's in this book.
Wow.
So I really think it just goes to prove too, and this is kind of some advice on this podcast, is Find yourself a really good, serious real estate accountant. Don't just find an accountant. It has to be specialized. If you're going to be a real estate investor, I promise you have to find those top, tier people. And Tom is one of those top tier people. And his book is really good. Lays it right out there for you. Does a great job with that book.
It's interesting. We do a lot of deals here locally. We buy from a lot of investors and some guys who have been investing for a long time. We buy some of their portfolios, and it's amazing how guys who've been investing for a long time, how much they really don't know.
I know.
Even in real estate investing. And so just because you got an office in a corner somewhere in some town doesn't make you an expert per se. So it's,
and that's why some of these books are so important.
Right.
You want to continually
100%.
Reading. Don't just think because you've got a small portfolio, you know it all.
Mm-hmm.
I think as soon as you think that you know it all, you've lost it all.
Sure.
So continued reading. Another book that I'll mention here that's not necessarily a real estate book is the book 10X by Grant Cardone. I think when it comes to creating goals and scaling or trying to get to that point of financial freedom in your life, I would highly recommend considering the 10X, book by Grant Cardone.
Now, another one you have here is How to Invest in Real Estate. That book, it's that's just the how-to more or less, and piece by piece, step by step.
Yep.
And so that's a good one. It's one that I've read, and I do think it's something that you guys should be interested in. You have The One Thing.
Again, not a real estate book, but I think it's very dangerous when our focus is very scattered. And whenever I leave an event, whenever I get done listening to a podcast or I read a book, I want to leave. I really do. I want to pull out one thing. I want this one thing to be that thing that I decide to change, or that one thing I decide to do. And I think it's very dangerous to go to a conference, for instance, and
Sure.
write down this big long to-do list of 40 things. More than likely, if you have a 40 thing to-do list from a conference, you're not going to do any of them. But if you just have one thing, you can get that one thing done. Now, how do you pick that one thing?
Yep.
I think a lot of times what you'll find is if you write your to-do list, let's just say you have 10 things on your to-do list. Most of the time, there's one thing that either sticks out as that most important thing, that one thing that if you hit that thing, it would almost be like a domino effect, and it would knock down several other dominoes. And those are some of the concepts that are taught in this book. And again, it's not a real estate book, but I think that I actually think you learn more real estate principles in non-real estate books than I think you do. I think you learn the how-to.
Sure.
When it comes to, real estate books and bigger pocket books and, the Millionaire Next Door type books and, real estate. I think there's a real estate millionaire book that we may have talked about as well. You learn about real estate, but you might learn how to do a deal.
Sure.
But if you think about it, in your real estate business, and that's what it is, whether you want to admit it or not, you own a real estate business. If you're a real estate investor, you own a real estate business. And in any other business, you show me another business where all the seminars, all the books are written on how to develop the product. And that's what we're talking about here. I mean, most of the real estate books are only talking about the product. How do I buy it? How do I sell it? How do I rehab it? How do I whatever it? But it's all about the product, and it has nothing to do with the business part of it. And who the person that you have to have or be in order to actually be able to make this successful. So that's why I think books like, The One Thing, Good to Great, all those books, I think, I actually think extreme ownership is really important too, because it talks about it's on you. If you have financial freedom, it's up to you. It's not up to anybody else. It's up to you. And if you're gonna get it or not, it's gonna be up to you.
That's good.
And we all have to kind of face that at some point. We can't wait until we're in our 60s to start saving. If we're gonna have financial freedom,
Sure.
We've got to start doing it as soon as we possibly can. And I think all those books really kind of preach and teach that message.
Yeah, in the previous podcast we recorded, you talked a little bit about that, even about, a list of guys who said the things that they wish they wouldn't have done. And then you have the guys who wish they had. And at some point you need to just take ownership and then go to the next step. And so A Stream of Ownership is a top 10 book, I guess that transcends certain industries. But a couple other ones that we'll just name. We have ABCs of real estate investing, and also the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And so those are a couple there that you can look into. A couple of just resources of places that you can go online. Of course, we did mention Bigger Pockets. And again, that's a great place, a great forum. One thing that's really interesting, there's so many different perspectives. Sometimes it can just be coming from all angles. Yeah.
Sometimes it can be confusing, and then you've got, you've got guys that are kind of arrogant that get on there and like act like everybody else is stupid, and that I hate that part of it. But you do have some really solid people on there that will give great advice, and so. Again, if you haven't checked out Bigger Pockets, definitely check out Bigger Pockets. But so what about some other resources? So we've named a bunch of books, and again, I could go on forever and ever. Sure. Every year I kind of like recalculate my top 100 and my top 50 and my top 5 books if somebody wants to ever get that list from me. But when it comes to podcasts or when it comes to other resources to learn about real estate investing. What have you learned from, or Jarrod, what are ones that you would recommend?
Well, first of all, we can, Bigger Pockets has a podcast too.
Yep.
So, I mean, again, that's another great place to go to. And sometimes we even get a content idea. We've had a couple articles we've discussed from Bigger Pockets, just to get some conversation going. I think a lot of times that's why I always want to be reading, because I don't know what I'm missing and something that's going to challenge my thinking. And so you always want to do that. Michael Zuber has a podcast and also a really good book, a book that if you're looking to start investing, that would be a good book to get.
One rental at a time.
That's right.
You got it.
Tom knows him pretty well.
No, he's a good friend of mine. Spoke with him on stage many times. He actually came to my mastermind. And he's a great guy. He owns hundreds of rentals and used to not be in rentals. He kind of started this passively and he's active / passive in it. He does a lot in it. But Michael Zuber's a great guy. He's got a great YouTube channel, and I think it's called the One Rental at a Time YouTube channel, and he's got that book called One Rental at a Time. I'd highly recommend both of those to anybody out there.
Yeah, it certainly, obviously, it makes a lot of sense, especially when you're getting started. That's usually what it looks like. You're buying one house, and so.
I'd love to recommend some of my friends as well. So
Sure.
I've got a great friend of mine. Actually was born in Jamestown, New York, the same city I was born in.
Wow.
Jim Ingersoll has a great podcast called the Real Estate Investor Success Podcast that I've been on several times as well, which is probably why it's so good.
Oh, of course.
But, yeah. So I think I've been on there twice. So, I mean, it made it double as good. But no, he is great. He's a good guy, genuine. Not super flashy, but I think sometimes you learn more from those guys. But he did that for quite a few years, and I'd highly recommend anything that Jim Ingersoll puts out or has. So definitely check him out if you haven't checked him out yet.
Another one that's we've listened to and you've been on is Storehouse 310.
Yes, our good buddies over there, good
up
guys
in Milwaukee.
Yep. Military guys, they kind of get it, and they're plugging along at what they do. They're just trying to teach other military guys, how to find financial freedom like they have. So it's a great kind of storyline almost. It's almost like they're just showing what they're doing, and as they're learning, they're like being a conduit, like I talk about. And they're teaching other people, so it's a really refreshing, podcast. Those guys are awesome.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you were just talking about before. A lot of people have been doing deals left and right, and they've done it. But you also really like the genuine guys who they're doing deals, but they're really helping people on the way, and they're leading with core values that they actually work with and work through and by. And those are the guys. I've actually talked to many of his clients, and they're generally military guys, and they all have everything, all but good to say about them. And so, so definitely something, a podcast you might be interested in and listen to. A couple other things here that you mentioned. You talked about the note expert. Tell us a little bit about that.
No, this guy's name is Bob Zachmeyer. He's actually here. He spoke at my last event here. But he's a really good dude. He's got even the note expert website, and he has got a show on iCloud Radio, so you can like listen to it anywhere. And he talks about notes. So it's a little different than what we talk about with turnkey rentals, but he's a good friend of mine. I highly recommend it. The guy's brilliantly smart, and it's really refreshing, and it's a really super high level. Let me just tell you that he just talked in our event here that we just had, how he created a small dollar Roth IRA. So small dollar would be like a couple $1,000s, and now he's grown it to over $1 million.
Wow.
So like, if you don't want that kind of knowledge, don't go listen to Bob. But if you do, I would tell you to listen to Bob. There's some other cool people in our network that I'd love to just tell you guys about. Quest, a trust company. If you do not have Roth IRA, if you do not have self-directed IRAs, and you're in real estate, you need to learn about the self-directed IRA, self-directed accounts, business and deal. And I don't think there's anybody better in the world that teaches this, that has as much education online as Quest Trust Company. So they have podcasts, they've got lunch and learn. I think there's 4 live events a week that they're doing right now.
Wow.
So they're and they actually also do live events at their offices. So if you're close to one of their offices, like in Dallas or Houston, or I think they're actually putting one in Chicago soon. But I think there's 3 or 4 other locations that they're at. I think the other 2, I think at least one of them, I think they're in Austin, Texas as well. But my friend Quincy Long, great guy, used to be part of our mastermind. But that, I think they give amazing education. I cannot say as much about them. And then honestly, some competitors. So I wouldn't even mind giving you guys our competitors. Some people might think, why in the world would you, promote other turnkey, podcasts or whatever? But, I would tell you that my buddy from Norada, I think he does a great job on his podcast. He has a great podcast. So if you guys want to check out the guys from Norada, or if you want to check out Kathy Fedke from Real Wealth Network, she's got a bunch of shows. I think she has 2 podcasts, and listen to what they have to say.
Sure.
Can take notes, compare it to what we have to say. Look at their deals, compare them to our deals. Jason Hartman also has a bunch of podcasts out there as well. So there's lots of other places that you can get resources if you just can't get enough. I know you're going to listen to us first because we are the self-proclaimed number one source of real estate. Probably comedy is probably where we probably lie better in, because we're just so funny. But I didn't get him. I didn't get Jared.
I thought it was funny.
Jared thought it was funny. So
yeah, I laughed.
But there are lots of other resources out there.
Yes, and again, this is not an exhaustive list. There's plenty of other sources out there, and probably some that many of you people are yelling at the screens or at the your radios or your phones or what have you, saying, "Why did you not include this?"
Don't forget about
such?
this guy.
Yeah, and so that's totally fine. This was just some things some sources that we've used, listened to, some websites we've jumped on to be able to improve ourselves, to grow ourselves, and these are just a start of a list, and maybe we can do a podcast with Tom's top 10 or top 5 or something one of these days.
I love that.
There you go. But
what I would do right now is I would comment right now. Like, so if you're watching this on social media,
great. Yeah, definitely.
If you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you could comment, go and comment right now. So all of you guys that are like throwing stuff at the screen or throwing at the radio, tell us your favorite other places to get education. Maybe it's a favorite book that you have, or maybe it's a favorite podcast you have, or maybe it's a YouTube channel, or whatever it is. Or maybe it's a great event. Like we didn't talk about events. We do have our event here. That's I think it's a great place. I think events take it to another level.
Sure.
And maybe we could do a whole podcast about just events and like how you can get the most out of going to a real estate event. But I'm telling you, your network is really your net worth, and you can get all the education in the world, but if you don't take action on it, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
And most of the time you need somebody else to help you take that action. And you don't meet those people unless you go out and network and find those people. So find events. I already mentioned Quest has great events. We have a great event here every single year called the Real Estate Free for All. And then we all, Jim Ingersoll has 1 or 2 events every year. I would check out his events. And there's lots of events out there, but when you go to events, don't just go to events to learn. Go to events to connect with somebody and figure out if maybe somebody else can, help you build your portfolio, or maybe you can help them. I think sometimes the most value is trying to figure out how you can help other people as well. So if this has brought you value, I hope that you'll give us 5 stars on those platforms. Share this, tell your friends about us. Love to have all those things. But if you know of something that you like, or maybe it's a favorite book, podcast, put it in the comments section below. We'll read those, and maybe it might be something that could teach me, or maybe Jarrod could learn something else. He's got a lot in that brain of his already, but maybe there's some room to cram some more in there.
More than willing. Don't forget, we also do build rental portfolios for investors. So if you're looking to get started, or you're looking to add or add a new market, you can reach me at Jarrod@buyolsongroup.com, or you can also go to our website at buyolsongroup.com. You can at that point, you can join our buyers list, and also you can download our free buyer's guide, and so you can learn more about what we provide here. And we appreciate you joining us. Active Turnkey,
the best way to buy rentals.
Thanks, guys. Olson Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olson Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olson Group Network. Olson Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.